today is finally the day. Hello everyone, we are finally gonna hit one of those crazy vertical traits. Oh my gosh, I've been playing so many games and I never hit the crazy vertical traits. I think I hit 9 frost once and I went 5th because I fought a fairy guy. It's crazy. It's so hard for me, but I feel like everybody else always seems to hit it. But this game is gonna be a fairy game, so I'm super excited to post it. This was from today's stream that I was just playing a little bit. I'm gonna be out for most of the week, so some of these VODs I just tried to get them out, so you might not see me live in the next couple days. But basically, we're starting out with a silver augment. Help is on the way is pretty good. I just take branching out. The reason I took branching out is because I actually hit 0 LP on master. Right, I went 1, I went 2, I was 100 LP master, I get 1/8, and you just drop straight to 0. You know, it's tough when your MMR is a little bit shot like mine is. But you know, of course, we're gonna work to unshot it, right? Try our best to fix it so we can rank up a little bit higher. Maybe we can hit Grandmaster or something higher than that. But anyways, I took branching out and I hit fairy +1. Branching out is really good if you hit it's like in the stats it's like okay to take branching out. But the reason it's okay is that sometimes you can really miss. Like you can get like an absolute dog shit emblem, like something like Shapeshifter or like Bastion, where it doesn't really do that much. It's hard to play around it in particular. But with branching out, if you hit any of like the good emblems that you can play towards, for example, Faerie, Blaster, anything that's a super meta comp, it puts you in a really big spot. Now, one Faerie emblem isn't that important. I do want to mention this quite a bit. I'll show you in terms of stats a little bit, and it's a little bit of an explanation just in terms of the line. So if you're playing around Faerie, now obviously I kind of spoiled it, the thumbnail as well. It's going to be a 9 Faerie game, so you know it's going to be a little bit of a high roll-ish game. If you take Faerie in general, let's say we take 5 Faerie, you'll see that the average is like a 4.43, and then if you take 7 Faerie, you'll see that the average is worse. So you might look at this, you might say, well, why is 7 Faerie worse than 5 Faerie? Isn't it better to play the vertical trait? It's just a matter of opportunity cost. A lot of times when you're playing 7 Faerie, it's because you're playing a lot of these shit units, for example, like Seraphine. Because Seraphine doesn't really synergize or do damage or really do anything for your board, and Katarina doesn't do that much. If you look at the Faerie trait in general, let me just try and find the traits here. Where is it? Control F, Faerie. If you read 5 Faerie, right, or Faerie in general, here we go, we got it all up on the screen. So 5 Faerie gives you, usually when you're playing the board, you're going to play 5 Faerie because it gives you the crown and it gives you the Queen's Guard armor. If you read 5 Faerie listed above, the Queen's Guard armor is what makes this comp really broken because it makes it so you have a reliable amount of damage on Kalista as well as a reliable amount of tankiness on Rakan. If you read the difference between 5 Faerie and 7 Faerie, 7 Faerie is really not that useful. It gives a little bit of more HP and it gives a very small amount of extra damage, only 5%, right? The crown goes from 45% to 50%, which isn't that all consequential, and it gives a second crown. That's the big deal, right? If you look at Faerie units, for example, let's just type them in. Faerie, there we go. Let's just put them all on here. Very rarely do you ever want to play 7 Faerie. Typically what you're going to do is you're going to play around this board, which I've talked about it a lot because it's very common. I'm sure you guys have seen it before. My apologies. Let's go back to there. It looks pretty much like this, and then Hecarim. But this is like your board typically, right? You're gonna play Lilia, and then you're gonna play Kalista, Milio, and then you just usually put in Katarina to hit the 5 Faerie, and then you play what's his name? This guy for Preserver and Chrono. And this is typically what your Faerie board looks like. I'm sure everybody has seen it before. I'm sure everybody has played it before. But this comp is very broken. It's the top of the meta. It's probably the most broken comp in the meta, in my opinion. It doesn't cap as high as something like Varus, but is way more reliable because 1-star Kalista and 1-star Rakan makes it that you almost always want to play towards this if you don't have a good opener. Now, if you have a Faerie +1, the problem is to fit in 7 Faerie on level 8, what you'll have to do is you'll usually have to play a Seraphine or a Tristana. We'll just put in Tristana because she's higher value. And then you're losing either Preservers, which is really important for Rakan, or you're losing one of Hecarim and Camille. So it essentially makes your board a lot weaker because what you're getting is Tristana, and 7 Faerie gives you an extra Faerie crown. But if you don't have Katarina 3, or if you don't have items for Katarina, or if you don't have a Camille and items for Camille, the extra Faerie emblem doesn't actually do that much. So the extra bit of HP and the extra bit of damage that you would get on your Kalista without the second crown is kind of useless in a lot of cases. That's why people usually don't play around 7 Faerie anymore. Before, people would always play around 7 Faerie. 7 Faerie is pretty useless. If you have a Faerie +1, a lot of the times what you'll do is you'll still play 5 Faerie. You'll just drop these 2 units, and then you can play more preservers. And it just makes your board a lot more reliable. You can just play Giga Preservers, make the Zircon even more tanky, and just stick at 5 Faerie. Of course, if you hit 9 Faerie, then you just win the game for free, and that's what this game is kind of going to be. Now, originally what I was planning on doing was just playing around 5 Faerie, and that's like my general game plan for much of the game. We hit really hard on branching out, obviously, because we hit the Faerie emblem. So for stage 2, this is a really important note that I remember. If you're here from the forecast guide that I just made, this is a really good note in the forecast guide. So as you can see here, I start the game off with like somewhat of an item, because I know that somewhat of a start with good items, but I don't necessarily prioritize making a strong board. Right, the reason I don't make a strong board is because I basically lose streak into getting bow. As you can see, this is the first carousel round, and I get a bow. When you're playing around Kalista, a lot of the times you want to guarantee having at least one Guinsoo, because it's very, very important on Kalista. If you don't have a Guinsoo on Kalista, the unit is actually useless. So it makes it very, very forcing. A lot of times you have to commit very, very early to playing Kalista, and there's not many pivot options because the only other Guinsoo user is Rise, and Rise doesn't really have good matchups into the current meta unless you really, really high roll into the Rise board. But if you're angling Kalista, you typically need to make a Guinsoo. Because I have Faerie +1, sorry, I have a Faerie emblem, I'm going to be playing towards Kalista. Now I'm okay with slamming some items here. Ideally, you want a 5 loss just to make sure that you're really rich. But in this case, I got my first item, so I'm very happy to just play towards these units right now and try and make my board as strong as possible. So as you can see, I slam my Guinsoo because I'm always going to be making a Guinsoo. Guinsoo is Winsoo. That's what you should always think about when you're playing Kalista. And 1 second, I just need to fix my inking real fast. There we go. I can draw on the board, I think. Or not. There we go. All fixed. So I'm slamming some items because I want to try and take as few losses as possible. My spot seems pretty good. But like I said, what I'm basically angling for is 5 Faerie with a bunch of preservers. Whenever you see a Faerie emblem, you should always think to yourself, just stay at 5 Faerie. The only time you want to play 7 Faerie is if you have Katarina 3. Right? If you have Cat 3, then you have a really good user of the emblem, or if you have Camille 2, right? These are the 2 options that you have. If you don't have a second user of the crown, of the Faerie crown in particular, then you're in a bad spot playing 7 Faerie. You're better off just using the emblem, dropping all of the trash units, and then just playing towards extra preservers on your board. So as you can see, my spot's pretty good. I lost most of these rounds. This guy, I didn't scout properly, decided to out-sack me. So my board is very weak, and I'm pretty sure I lose to everybody else. But this guy decided to swap out his board. Before he had Ezreal, I think he had an item on Ezreal as well. And he decided to like open it so that he loses to me. So it griefs my streak. I didn't think he would grief me because if you look at his HP, he's not 4 loss, right? I'm pretty sure he won a round if he's 82 HP because I was full open and I was more HP than him, or I was less HP than him. So I'm pretty sure that he won a round already, but maybe I just misread the situation. So it's pretty bad. You want a 5 streak ideally if you're playing around a 4-cost comp. Especially if you're lose streaking early. The 1 HP or the 2 HP that I would have had here wouldn't matter too much in terms of how much gold I have. Now I am in a really good spot. I'm making 50. I'm level 4, 58 gold on Krugs. I'm in a really good spot for the rest of the game in order to play around hitting Kalista and a full like Faerie board. Now, of course, I kind of spoiled it through the thumbnail, so hopefully it's not like too much of an eyesore, and this kind of shows you like the journey's way through this comp. But I'm always going to hold on to a Seraphine, just because like there's always the potential that you just high roll and you hit a Faerie +2. 9 Faerie is one of the most broken traits in the game right now. If you look at the traits, I'll pull them up real fast. Let's go stats traits. We'll put in terms of placement. 10 Eldritch is the best, obviously. 10 Mage is the best, and 10 Portal is the best. 10 Portal is the only one that requires 2 spats that that's really, really strong, but they all require you to be level 10 unless you have a trainer sentinel. And then next to that is 9 Faerie, and it is way better than 9 Frost. It's way better than 8 Witchcraft. So unless somebody hits some sort of giga board, 9 Faerie will almost always win the lobby. The only time you really lose the lobby is if you're playing in a trainer sentinel board and somebody has 10 portal. But it's very, very strong for what it is. It's absolutely broken. It's almost game winning on the spot, is the way you should always look at it. Anyways, let's see what my next augment choice is. Like I said, you should never angle yourself thinking that I'm gonna hit 9 Faerie. That's not really what we're doing here. What we're doing is we're trying to build towards the Kalista board. We're establishing ourselves to roll down on level 8 for a Kalista comp, and we're gonna try and preserve HP and worry about stuff along the way, like worry about how we're gonna fix our board along the way. In this particular example here, double Gwinsu is really good on Kalista. Typically, I think even in my forecast guide I said that you don't usually want to slam a Last Whisper on Kalista. It's usually better just to make Even Shroud and to put double Gwinsus on the Kalista. Now, I understand that I made a Last Whisper here, and that's maybe against the advice. It's mostly just like positioning and item economy, right? If you look at my items here, we'll talk about it right after the augment choice. So I'm looking for something that's really strong here. Inspiring Epitaph and Martyr, I actually checked. It says both of them are really good with Kalista, because on Kalista's board, the only 2 units that matters are Rakan and Kalista. So both of these work by like whenever one of your allies die, your other units either heal or they gain shielding and attack speed. Inspiring Epitaph said that it was a little bit better in the stats, so that's why I took Inspiring Epitaph. And I believe it. It makes sense. You just get attack speed and shielding. It's almost the same as Martyr, which gives you HP. And that's just because when you're playing the Faerie board, basically all that matters is Kalista and Rakan. And your Kalista and Rakan are going to live the longest anyway. So these type of augments that when units die, gain stats or gain effect is pretty good. Right? One of the best things to play with Kalista, for example, is Avenge the Fallen. Because Avenge the Fallen is like when 3 units die, you gain a bunch of armor, MR, damage, etc. So it works out really, really well to play towards those lines, especially if you're in a spot where you're playing around Kalista. Now, I made a Last Whisper because if you look at my items, I have a Stone Plate and I have a Belt. These are going to be Rakan items for sure. Now, I could greed the Last Whisper instead, and I could decide, okay, maybe I'll just like, double reforge the glove and try and hit a second Gwinsu. Or I can just say to myself, these are my Kalista items, I'm alright, and I'll worry about things later. I'll worry about making Rakan items for later. So in this case, for example, as you can see, I found a Rakan early, it's very high roll. If you're going to play for a first and you're going to hit some crazy shit, you definitely have to high roll at one point in the game. I paid my due. Okay, I don't need people to talk shit. I don't need people to be like, whatever, like, this is just a high roll, this is a fake game. I paid my due, okay? I lost so much LP today, okay? Give it to me. Give me the Rakan early. You know this 7th, by the way, I had 2 Rakans, 2 Kalistas, and I was 3-way contested, and with double Kalista, double Rakan, everybody else hit their Rakan Kalista. It was fucked. It was so fucking bad. Anyways, that's a separate issue. But anyways, so we have our Gwinsu. Any bow item, double Gwinsu is the best on Kalista, but any bow item is good. It's just about item economy. You want to make sure that you're slamming items early to preserve HP, right? Even if I don't win every round this stage, I already lost all of stage 2. I'm putting myself in a good spot to play for a very strong top 4 by making this early. Usually you only greed items if you're 1, playing for first, or 2, if your items are really, really bad that you need to have the direction of an additional item or carousel in order to make a better choice, right? Last Whisper is a bow item, and it does utility for me, so it's not the end of the world if I take it. Here I would have preferred to have Warmogs. Warmogs on Rakan 1 is very, very good. Warmogs isn't that important on Rakan 2, but typically you're making Warmogs and Gargoyle because you get a bunch of armor and MR, and then Warmog gives you a bunch of HP, and then with Preservers and Rakan's effects, he scales really well off HP, which is why Warmogs is really good. But Warmogs kind of falls off in certain situations later in the game. But anyways, we make our Gargoyle, and this is what I was saying, I have really good item economy, right? I'm playing around this belt. This belt could be a Morello, it could be anti-heal, it could be a Warmogs, it can be a frontline item for this Rakan. So I don't want to greed too much around playing around the bow and the glove, because this is a fine item, and it'll also help me win a lot of these rounds right now during stage 3, and that will put me in a good spot to win out for the rest of the game. I don't know exactly what people are going to hit. I don't know exactly how this game is going to go. But what's really, really important for me is to make sure that I have a lot of HP now. Whenever you're playing around a 4 cost, there's like a balance of resources that you have to do. Part of it is your HP. The other part of it is your money, your econ. Right, my econ's very good. I'm level 750 gold because my stage 2 went really well. My stage 2 went well, and it's also a gold galaxy. I think it's gold subscription. So everybody's going to get a bunch of gold. So we expect the econ to be good here. The only thing that I really need to make sure that I'm in like a good high roll spot is to preserve some HP. As you can see, I'm almost going to be most HP in the lobby. There's only 2 people that are higher HP than me. And my board also is good value. I have good items, right? I have, I don't have anti-heal yet, but I have Sundering. I have 1 Guinsu on Kalista, which is good enough. And I have at least 1 or 2 Rakan items in the works. Having that type of item spread is really good just to set you up, because basically no matter what I get dropped, I should be fine to complete my items and then continue to be strong into stage 4. And that's what I care about more here, just because I want, like, you know, until you know that you're playing for first, if you're playing around a 4 cost board, it just matters so much to manage these resources. Because like you don't want to be like, you know, greeting your items, then you're going to be like, you know, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be like 40 HP, then if I roll down, I don't hit Kalista, I don't hit Rakan upgrades, and then I lose to a high roller, then all of a sudden I go 8th. It's not necessarily the greatest thing to do. From this spot, you have a very, very high chance of top 4ing, so you just want to guarantee it by making sure that you're strong in your mid game. Don't overdo it, don't say, it's not this, it's not this, it's fine, right? You'll be fine. Trust me, it'll be fine. But anyways, we're level 7, 70 gold. We're pretty good to go here. Like I said, 7 Faerie isn't that important. We shouldn't really think too highly of 7 Faerie. As you can see, I am still holding the Seraphine on bench. You always hold on to a Seraphine, by the way, until you hit your next augment. You can sell it afterwards, but especially if you have a Faerie +1, you can only get 1 emblem. Like, you can only get offered Faerie emblem 1 time, right? Like, you can only get it offered from the gold or the prismatic. But I got my first Faerie emblem off of branching out, which means that there is a potential that on this last augment I can hit a Faerie +1, and then I'm just gonna play 9 Faerie, right? We got a bunch of gold. So of course, because everybody else got gold, you can see on the side everybody's leveling up. Everybody got the same amount of gold. It's a huge amount of gold. So we're all rolling on level 8 this turn. So I'm looking at my board, I'm trying to figure out what to put in. And now I'm just rolling. So I upgrade Tristana just in case I don't hit Kalista this turn. But basically I'm just rolling for 1 copy of Kalista. Ideally I can find Rakan 2, Kalista 2, but this comp is stable with Rakan 1, Kalista 1. I'm a bit slow, so I still have my Kalista on bench here. I wasn't able to like remove her. I do have a remover here that I can switch the items over, so it should be fine. And then we're going to see what our last augment is, and that's like the main thing that we're going to try and play towards. This guy has a Briar already, which is a little bit scary. So we'll see how this fight plays out. But we should be fine. This Rakan's basically unkillable. The Rakan with the Faerie armor. I also have Warmog's Gargoyle. Like I said before, my items work out really, really well. So we're good to go. I still have these 2 Reforgers. I might use them, I might not. Sword isn't that valuable in this comp, but it could turn into a Sterex or a Camille or something else, like some kind of Camille item. As you can see, I'm rolling. I hit Faerie Crown, so it's just always take Faerie Crown, by the way. It's just, that's it. 9 Faerie. It's 9 Faerie, and because this comp is so stable, this is why 9 Faerie is so fucking annoying to play against. Because this comp is so fucking stable, right? Like, I don't have to roll for Kalista 2 here. That's like the biggest bait that you can fall yourself into, like the biggest trap. There's no reason for me to roll. I'm 40 gold. Kalista, Rakan. I'm gonna win most of these fights. Also, I'm 70 HP. That's why you really want to play around your HP in your mid game. Sometimes you get into these high roll spots. If I was like, let's say I was 10 HP because I didn't slam any items and I was waiting to get double Guinsu, or I was waiting to hit like Bis items on everybody. If you don't slam your items in your mid game and you drop to really low HP, you don't have the flexibility for these high roll spots sometimes. So especially right now, like this guy, he's rolling for Kalista too. Let him roll. I'm just going to go straight to 9. I need to find 1 Milio now. If I find Milio, I win the game for free. Now, of course, there are ways that you can lose the game even with 9 Faerie. 9 Faerie is subject to your backline dying. It gives a bunch of HP, yes. It gives a bunch of damage, yes. But so much of the Rakan's healing is based on your Kalista doing damage. So the way that Faerie usually dies is if the Kalista gets sniped by somebody. There are a couple comps that can snipe Kalista. For example, Varus. Varus has a really strong matchup into Kalista Rakan because not only does Varus have enough damage to chew through the Rakan, sometimes the Varus or even like an Arcana with Xerath, for example, they end up killing this. They end up killing the Kalista. As soon as your Kalista dies, it doesn't matter how many Rakans you have. This Rakan does 0 damage, right? The rest of your board, they're dog shit. They're not doing anything, right? Unless you have a Camille. Like, unless you get this Jax and you turn into a Camille too, you're not winning any fight if your Kalista dies. So this comp is very front to back. It's very, this is my tank, this is my damage, right? So it's very easy to just lose very, very fast if you don't hit. Now, of course, or very, very fast if your backline gets hit is what I meant to say. As you can see though, very broken. This is just 5 Faerie. Like I said, there's no real reason to play around 7 Faerie. I just played a Preserver and Arcana, right? So I just stacked in some extra Arcana. When you're taking Arcana, the best thing usually to play is Hecarim, because it gives durability, which helps with just regular damage reduction, but it also helps you to give attack damage to your Kalista, so she can do a little bit more work with every auto. The only players that we're really scared of here are Varus players. Even if we hit 9 Faerie, there is a chance that our Kalista just gets sniped, so you should not sleep on it. Obviously, you can definitely lose to very high roll boards. I've seen Kalista 9 Faerie lose to like a Vigor board, for example. Like Vigor reroll just has enough DPS to chew through the Rakan early enough, and a Nami stunning the Kalista makes sure that the Kalista doesn't get her Guinsoo stacks as high. But over here, I'm deciding to just greed a little bit. I could go level 9 right now, but I want to have enough gold to roll to guarantee 1 millio. If I hit 1 millio, I'm pretty sure that I beat everybody in the lobby, at least until I can find the Kalista and the Rakan. Because this comp is so stable, this is the main reason. Usually, if you're not stable with Kalista 2, Rakan 2, you might have to roll for Kalista 2, Rakan 2. This comp is just insanely stable with Kalista 1, Rakan 1. As you can see, most other boards that I play, I'm not even worried about. Now, this guy is scary. He has Kalista 2, Rakan 2, and he has Final Ascension. If you look, he's also trying to grief me, which is a correct decision in a way, right? Holding on to, like, extra Kalistas here makes it so that I can't hit Kalista. I'll come back to talk about this gameplay later, because it's fine to grief me now, but it's not fine to grief me once I hit 9 Faerie, and I'll explain why in a little bit. I was talking about it on stream as well, but probably not in like the most elegant way. Of course, I was probably in a tilted way talking about it, but that's totally fine. This guy's also playing around Rakan, so what I'm doing is I'm basically deciding to not roll early to hit Rakan 2, Kalista 2, because I'm 9 Faerie. If you're not 9 Faerie, you should definitely be rolling a little bit deeper on these stages, because these other players can hit all of the Kalistas and the Rakans, because it's often very contested. Rakan more so than Kalista is contested, just because other Preserver boards will buy this unit, so it becomes very hard to hit. And if you don't have a Rakan 2 at a certain point, you won't be stable, right? Starting stage 5, you're probably going to lose most fights if you don't have Rakan 2 at minimum. Right? The Kalista is okay, but the Rakan especially you need to hit. So it's very, very scary later on. This guy, for example, he has Blaster +1. So you'll see what I mean. My Kalista, just by stray bullets, is already at half HP. As soon as this Kalista dies, which she dodged that Bear Assault, but it's very likely that she'll die before this Rakan, and then I'll run into a spot where I'll just lose the round. This worked out okay. This guy's board isn't complete yet, by the way, but once this guy has like a fully fledged Arcana Varus board with 6 Blaster in, I will likely have a hard time beating him if I wasn't 9 Faerie. That's why you want to roll earlier rather than later. You want to make sure that you have the copies of the units that you need, because if you don't, then you'll just like lose the rounds earlier. Typically what I always suggest is that you roll when you're paired on a unit, because if you're not paired on units, there's no reason to roll. Because like you gotta roll for more than one thing. The problem is with Kalista and Rakan, you can't like outweight other people, because if they're in a bad spot, they're gonna be donkey rolling, and then if they buy all the copies of the unit, then you're just fucked. But anyways, we're gonna be level 9 this turn, and we're gonna roll as much as possible. Here I make a redemption. because Redemption is just a really good late game item to help with this Recon, and we find our Milio. We had like 50 gold to roll on level 9, so I would have been shocked and really pissed off if we didn't hit the Milio, and now obviously the best play, no matter what, is to play 9 Faerie. If you haven't seen 9 Faerie, what happens is you get an extra crown from 7 Faerie, but as soon as you get 9 Faerie, they all upgrade to this Radiant version, which just means that they're just giga juiced, right? As unkillable as you think Rakan was before, just, you know, hold my beer, watch him right now. So now we also hit a Camille, which is great, so we can put the Camille in. As you can see, I'm rolling a lot here. The reason I'm rolling so much, by the way, is because I bought the Xerath charm that made rolls 1 gold. If you look at my rerolls, I didn't mention it before, but they're 1 gold. So I'm just burning all my gold this turn, trying to hit everybody. I'm not sure if I'm going to play this Tahm Kench over somebody. That's why I made the Tahm Kench. But basically, I'm looking for Kalista 2, and I'm looking for Rakan 2. Right? As you can see, the Rakan is basically unkillable. The problem is with Kalista 1, it's very scary here because, for example, this guy is not like Varus 2, I don't think. I think he's just Varus 1 right now. But if he was Varus 2, there's a chance that he might snipe the backline. And if he snipes the backline, then I run into a problem where it's like, okay, I lost my damage, then the whole board collapses instantly. It doesn't matter if you're 9 Faerie. What usually matters, you have to make sure that your Kalista isn't getting deleted instantly. The Kalista is going to be very tanky because of 9 Faerie, by the way. It's just that if it's a Kalista 1, there's one point where this board is going to fall apart very fast. That's why I'm rolling pretty aggressively. I'm not rolling necessarily for Rakan, but I am paired on pretty much everybody on my board, right? I have Camille pair, Milio paired, Rakan pair, Kalista pair. So I'm basically rolling to 0 every single turn because any one of these units will spike my board, right? Any single one of these units is a spike to my board. Namely, the one that I want the most is Kalista. If I hit Kalista 2, then I'm not worried as much. Like, see here, for example, like my Kalista dropped to half health because the Fiora jumped in. I was able to kill the Fiora, but, you know, if this guy had a much stronger board, for example, or he hits, like, you know, a couple other units that are very strong, there's a chance that I still lose with 9 Faerie, that this Kalista dies first. Here I reroll. I'm just rolling for things. I hit the Kalista, so I'm happy. I'm not playing Preserver anymore, by the way. This is basically just the board. If you're playing 9 Faerie, it's all the Faerie units. Camille with the Faerie crown because she's a good user of it, and then the Milio. Now here's the part that I was getting really annoyed with this guy. So this guy's holding extra Kalistas. I already have Kalista 2, by the way. There's another player in the lobby that's going for Varus 3, which I'll point out when we fight him. This guy is just like holding Kalistas for no reason anymore. I can understand if he's holding Rakans because, like, you know, he's trying to make it so that I don't hit my units, and that's totally fine and valid. But look at this guy. He has six dudes, and he's Pandora's bench. Like, I understand that there's 2 Varus players and there's another player that's holding the Varus units, but like, you shouldn't hold extra 4 costs when there's a guy rolling for a 3-star 4 cost. Right? Because the only way that I lose the game is this guy hits Varus 3. Maybe that's better than 9 Faerie. It's hard to tell. It depends if the Varus snipes the Kalista, as I said before. But the other problem is, like, this guy's not beating me. Right? This guy that's holding this extra Kalista, he's not beating me. Right? How does he beat me? He doesn't. He doesn't beat me because I'm 9 Faerie, right? So him holding the extra 4 cost is just bad. Right? It just makes it so that, like, you're making it easier for other people to hit their boards. Right? You should just sell the Kalistas. Like, you know, logically. Because, like, I understand if he's griefing me. I already have Kalista 2. It's like, you have Kalista 2, I have Kalista 2. Why do you have a Kalista on your bench? And, you know, you might think, like, oh, he forgot about the Kalista. You know, he'll sell it eventually. If you look back on his board later, he holds another Kalista. He just starts holding extra Kalistas for no reason. Right now, he's holding 1. Later, he holds 2. And it's like, bro, what? But anyways, I found an extra Faerie emblem on Carousel. It's not that high roll. All it does, it means I can fit in Arcana. I can also fit in Zillion, which gives me Preserver as well as Chrono. So it would give me Chrono and Preserver. So Zillion is probably a little bit better, but it's not necessary right now, basically. Also, I think my Hecarim items would have been better swapped with the Camille items, but I don't have 2 removers, so, you know, it is what it is. And I think I forget later to do that. This is the guy that's 5 Pyro, by the way. So this guy's also quite scary, especially if it's a Xerath 2. Xerath has a Pyro emblem, so he can easily execute my Kalista. There's a chance that I lose some of these late game fights. It's just right now, if he's not, like, you know, giga juiced, if he doesn't have, like, you know, what's his name, Xerath 2, everybody upgraded, the chances are he's not going to beat me, so it's totally fine. I could buy this charm, but I'd rather just have a combat. I don't know if I actually end up buying it. I think I just roll for a better charm. Because I'm still paired on all of these units. So I can definitely just like roll to buy. Right? I'm paired on Rakan, Camille, and Milio. And they all spike my board by a lot. This is what I was saying, right? You see how he's holding 2 Kalistas? Right? This guy has 6 Varus's. Right? Like he's literally trying to hit like a 3-star 4 cost. If you're going to hold units on your bench, hold units to prevent that guy from hitting. Because the thing is that this guy griefing me doesn't matter. Because I beat this guy every single time. There's no way this board will ever beat my board. So he shouldn't be trying to grief me. He should be trying to grief the other players so he can get second place. Because this guy has a chance to get second, right? He's level 9, Kalista 2, Rakan 2, 5 Faerie with a Morgana, right? He has a good chance of playing for second. But instead, he's holding like my units. That's 8 gold. There's no way this guy is true 0, 8 gold on bench. Like, make econ. Build your own board. Play for second. Like, what are you doing? Like, he's holding 8 gold on bench. There's no way he doesn't have, like, what? And this guy's going for Varus 3. It's like, what are we doing here? But I don't make a big deal of it. I don't know why he was doing that. Maybe he had like a good reason that I don't understand very well, of course. But the reason I'm pointing it out is just that I want to spread like good griefing ethics, right? The way you should grief people is you should always grief. There's always a reason to grief, right? But griefing should always have a direct consequence to your position. There's no reason for you to hurt your own chances of getting a top 4 just to fuck over somebody else. The thing that you should always consider is, what can I do that is the best decision for me, right? What do I do that makes my board the best? Not what can I do to fuck over that guy, because if that guy dies, then I can get a better placement. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, I'm already going to be the one that wins the lobby. I'm playing for a first. You're playing for a top 4. You might not even go top 4. Work on, like, you know, hold Briars, hold Varus, hold these units. And if you're not going to hold those, sell your 4 costs so it's harder for him to hit. Right? The more 4 costs that are in the pool, the harder it is to find the 4 costs that you need. If someone doesn't have upgrades yet, so for example, if this guy's missing smolders, right? You don't want to hold extra 5 costs, right? I'm not just going to hold this Briar, because then it's going to be easier for him to hit smolder, because if I'm holding 5 costs, I'm making less available in the pool, right? That's where griefing doesn't make that much sense. As you can see here, this fight was actually kind of close, right? Camille had a little bit less damage, and I was down to my last 2 units. And that was a clone, right? Or sorry, my Kalista. Anyway, I hit Camille 2. I'm holding Milio because Milio can upgrade. This guy is a little bit scary, the Blaster Varus players. And it's just a matter of, like, this guy, for example, is not that scary to me. The Blaster players are the only ones that are scary. So as you can see, I'm always trying to make a clump away from my Kalista. The reason I make a clump away from my Kalista is because if they have Fiora, there is a Fiora player in the lobby, and if they have Varus, I think Varus attacks the largest clump as well, like within the range. So I want to make sure that there's a nice juicy little clump over here so that he doesn't accidentally shoot towards this Kalista. And as you can see, when he shoots in this area. My Kalista is spared from the damage, so I don't have any worries about accidentally getting sniped. This guy was really scared because he also had a Briar, by the way. Now, I end up killing him off here for sure because it's stage 6. So there's no way he's going to live this hit. Yeah, we win it. That's great. And lots of people died this round. That was crazy. Now I'm 9 Faerie against this guy. It's another Varus player. I'm not too scared about the Varus player. I hit the star. That's a lot of times when you're playing our Arcana, you always want to put in this guy late game, the Xerath. Xerath is really good on a lot of boards, not because of Xerath damage and Xerath crazy shit. It's because you get access to the Xerath charms, and especially on stage 6, you can sometimes mill the deck and hit some really good stuff. So here right now is gonna give me Xerath 2, Milio 2, and it's gonna give everybody extra damage, which is really big. That's a really good charm compared to some of the other stinkers you can hit, right? He had a Zephyr. I didn't even know he had a Zephyr, by the way. But Zephyr's not my Kalista, so that's totally alright with me. And like I said, we clump away from the Kalista to make sure we don't get hit. The Xerath is a little bit scary, because the Xerath has an execute. The thing is, he doesn't have, like, insane damage on the Xerath. So as you can see, my Kalista is dropping HP. If he had, like, Archangels on Xerath, maybe he could win a fight. But I'm already multiple lives, so it's fine. Anyways, that's 9 Faerie. Isn't that fun? First time I hit it, I usually never make it to 9 Faerie. I usually die a lot earlier. It just worked out with a little bit of high roll and a little bit of like working out, everything working out for me. But you know, like I said before, if you don't hit 9 Faerie, you're typically just playing, even with a Faerie +1. I tried playing 7 Faerie one time, but that was because I had a good spot for a Kalista 3, or sorry, a Katarina 3. So my Katarina 3 could make use of the Faerie Crown really well in that game. But if you don't have a Katarina 3, or you think that you might not hit the Kalista 2, a lot of times it's just better to play Preservers instead. Here I just played Arcana because that's what I hit. If you don't hit Arcana, you can play a Zillion, which is probably a lot better to optimize this board because of the Chrono healing, as well as the Zillion Bomb stunning, as well as the Preserver for your whole board. But yeah, it's very, very hard to crack this board. Varus is the worst matchup for Kalista by far. So these were very strong Varus boards, and they didn't even come close to beating me. That's 9 Faerie. Hopefully it was fun. Hopefully it was enjoyable. Have a great rest of day. And if you came from the guide, thank you for watching my guide, and thank you for watching this video as well. I think tomorrow we're going to take a break from Kalista. It's going to be a Chrono game, so that should be fun. So we're going to play a 6 Chrono game, and then after that, we'll see what we hit. But thank you for watching, and have a great day.